Hey everyone, it's Ivan, keepbadger.com, out here to bring you another gear review, and today, targeting lights and lasers, this one right here, which is the VIR II by Streamlight. So, 30,000 foot view, what is it? Well, as it may or may not be apparent, VIR, visible IR. So, you have a visible light, as well as you can switch it over to the IR setting, and you have both infrared light as well as laser activated together. And this being the 2, there's obviously a 1. In this one, in version 1, the laser was basically offset down a little bit lower, whereas here they managed to combine everything together, create ultimately a smaller footprint, and I think honestly a better setup with respect to that infrared laser. So, how does this thing work? Like most pistol mounted lights, to activate it, there's a toggle switch on the back. When you press down and keep pressure on it, turn it on intermittently, let go, turns itself off. When you press up, you can lock it in the up position, on, and then bring it back to the center, turn it off. You have your windage and elevation for adjusting your infrared laser. And then on the bottom, basically you have 3 different positions. Right now it's in white light, put it to the middle, and it'll turn it off so you don't have any type of negligent discharge with respect to white or infrared light. And then all the way over, you're in infrared. So when you activate it, instead of your white light, you will have your infrared light as well as your infrared laser. Having said all that, what has been my experience? How have I used this? Well, initially used it kind of maybe outside of the scope of its original design, it being made for pistols, but I actually used it in a 3-day night vision course with AMTAC Shooting, and it was mounted on my high point carbine, on my primary. And during that course, it did a good job. It allowed me to move from white light, again, transitioning kind of light as it was starting to get dark, being able to illuminate with white light, or when we were actually under nods, being able to switch it over and have the IR illuminator as well as laser for basically active aiming, emitting light and laser. And yeah, did a great job for me through that course. Fast forward, used it on a number of different just kind of outings to the range, doing some training, whether it was on this right here, Glock 44, or switching over to my Glock 17. And then I used it in a 1-day introduction to night vision course by Cuyval Dar, where I had it mounted on my Glock 17. And through all of that, it actually did a really good job for me. Of course, we don't want to look at things in a vacuum, so I ended up taking this out to the range and comparing it to a couple other lights. One of which, Surefire X300 Ultra. Not necessarily the same in that it's just white light, but kind of a gold standard for some people. Also, what is similar is the X400 Vampire. Also white as well as infrared light as well as laser. So here are basically all 3 of those lights at 10, 25, and 50 yards. 10 yards, reduced silhouette, illuminated with the Surefire X300 Ultra. Here we are at 10 yards with the X400 Vampire. And 10 yards, the Streamlight VIR. Here we are at 25 yards, illuminated with the Surefire X300 Ultra. Now illuminated with the X400 Vampire by Surefire. And the Streamlight VIR. Here we are at 50 yards, reduced silhouette, illuminated with the Surefire X300 Ultra. That same silhouette, illuminated with the Surefire X400 Vampire. silhouette illuminated at 50 yards with the Streamlight VIR. Right here at 10 yards on a reduced silhouette, the Streamlight VIR with IR illuminator and laser. "10 yards with the Streamlight X400 Vampire, illuminator and laser. Here we are at 25 yards with the Streamlight VIR, illuminator and laser. Here we are, 25 yards, Surefire X400 Vampire, illuminator and laser. Here we are at 50 yards, Streamlight VIR, IR illuminator and laser. "50 yards, Surefire X400 Vampire, IR illuminator and laser. Comparatively, what do I think of this? Well, the white light is not as bright. It's 300 lumens, and it's arguably a lot kind of a wider spill, kind of diffused. Do I think that's a bad thing? No, we get into application. What is your application? Are you trying to make a 75-yard pistol shot with this? Probably not. And to that end, are you maybe defending your house? In which case, that flood illuminates things well. Your furthest shot is, I don't know, 20, 25 yards, like long shot down a hallway. Probably does an amazing job. So we get into the application of how you're gonna actually use something and how it performs. And I think this, especially those relatively close distances, like 25 yards or so, especially inside a structure, actually does really good. A couple things worth mentioning. One, this actually operates off of one CR123 battery. You replace the battery in the back here, this door opens, put it in there. As far as the runtime off that one battery for white light at 300 lumens, you're getting about an hour and a half. And then infrared, both are activated at the same time. So when you activate the infrared light and laser, you can't basically separate it to just the IR light or just the IR laser, but running both of them, you get about 12 hours of runtime. Dimensionally, this is just over about 3¼ inches and just under about 4 ounces with respect to weight. One thing I really like about this laser is the location. It's actually inside this housing here. And with that, you end up with a very small offset. So the bore is here and your laser's right here. They're very close to each other versus having the laser down here. Where does that come into play? Well, if you are up close, inside a structure, something along those lines, and maybe you have a low probability target, rather than having this giant offset you need to compensate for, the offset's much smaller with your laser, which is pretty cool. Also, depending on how you're going to use this, if you're going to put it on maybe a subgun or a carbine, lots of times those lasers are made to sit up top on pick rail and they'll be offset. So now you have elevation as well as offset to the right or left usually. Where that comes into play is getting that thing zeroed and knowing your hold. So you either have a converging zero or a parallel zero, meaning if the bore is facing this direction and my laser's set over here off to the side, I can have a parallel zero where basically it's going straight, roughly the exact same distance off of the bore the entire way out. So the bullet's going to travel like this, the laser's going to go like this right next to it, which can work. But then maybe I have a converging zero. So bore's going straight like this laser's coming here, and they basically converge at a certain point, even though the trajectory of the bullet's making an arc. Again, pros and cons for both of them. With this so close, basically on center line, you essentially alleviate that. So yes, the bullet's still traveling in an arc, but the laser's basically going right below it or right above it, depending on how you have this set up on a carbine or a subgun, which is pretty handy. Of course, another hurdle of weapon-mounted lights is finding holsters. VIR II, pretty well supported. You can find Safariland, things like that. One of my favorites, honestly, is Black Point Tactical. In part, it's really easy. Rather than like trying to find a million different SKUs, like you go on there, you're like, okay, I want outside the waistband, this pistol model, this light, done. And the other nice thing too is because this actually, or the holster rather, the retention is based on the light. Basically, you can go ahead and do what I did. Got a holster from a Glock 17 and this VIR II, and it'll fit smaller pistols. So by way of example, this is basically sized to a Glock 19, and it of course still works in this holster, which is pretty handy. What are my thoughts on the Streamlight VIR II? Honestly, I think it is an incredible value. You can get these for between like $320 and $350. I ended up getting this from GT distributors. Getting into night vision is incredibly expensive. And I think one of the greatest things about this setup in particular is allowing you to basically scale. So what do I mean by that? Well, initially I got into night vision and I needed IR illuminator and laser. Ended up getting this, putting it on my primary, on that carbine for that 3-day AMTAC Shooting night vision course. Did a great job there for me. But on my secondary, on my pistol, I had an RMR, so I could still aim passively through night vision, but definitely a limitation. Eventually, I was able to scale in capability and cost and get a dedicated IR laser as well as illuminator for my carbine, at which point I could move this to my secondary, my Glock 17. So now I had two different weapon systems, primary and secondary, both with IR lasers and illuminators, which was huge. And realistically, this probably does most everything someone's looking for with respect to the IR illuminator and laser. Going back to actual application. Where are you going to use this? Probably defending your house, right? And to that end, the throw, the IR illuminator laser does a great job to that end. I think honestly, it probably fit the bill for most people's application. If you end up picking one up, let me know it's done for you. And if you want to support the content I create, greatly appreciate it. Whether it's liking and sharing videos or going over to kitbadger.com, maybe picking up some of the new patches I got over there, or support me directly through Patreon, helps me get out, create more content for you. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.